You've probably heard the stories. Figures that stand in doorways or linger just at the edge of your vision. They're silent, they're featureless, and they seem to watch us when we're at our most vulnerable. So are they just tricks of a tired mind? Or are we getting a glimpse of something else, something waiting in the dark? Well, tonight, we're going to step into those shadows and see if we can find out. Okay, I want you to picture this. You're in your bed, you're in that perfect, cozy space right between being awake and being completely asleep. And then you feel it. The air in the room changes. There's a presence. And you just know you're not alone anymore. You try to glance over and you see it. A shadow. But this one's different. It's deeper, it's darker than all the others. And that's when the real terror kicks in. Because your mind is wide awake, it's screaming, but your body, it's locked down, frozen solid. You are completely, utterly powerless, a prisoner in your own bed with this thing just watching you. Now, that horrifying experience, it's not just some random nightmare. It is a recognized phenomenon, something shared by countless people all over the world and all throughout history. It actually has a name, and that name is our very first clue to figuring out what's really going on here. The scientific term for this is sleep paralysis, and it's basically a moment when your brain's wiring gets a little crossed. Your mind wakes up before your body does. So you're conscious, but you're still locked in that muscle paralysis that keeps you from, acting out your dreams. In that confusing, terrifying state, your brain scrambles to make sense of why it's trapped. And a lot of the time, it invents a presence in the room to explain the fear. But here's where that neat scientific explanation starts to get a little messy. Because the mechanism might be sleep paralysis, but the story of a dark figure visiting people in their sleep, that's as old as humanity itself. This is not a new thing, it's a timeless fear, woven into the fabric of cultures all across the globe. And the consistency is just staggering. I mean, go back 5,000 years. The ancient Sumerians talked about the Alu, a being that roams the night and paralyzes you. In medieval Europe, they called it the Mara, which is actually where we get our word nightmare, a demon that sits right on your chest. From the Choctaw Nation's soul-eating the Lusachido to Japan's vengeful Kanashibari spirits, the names are different, but the terrifying visitor is always the same. And make no mistake, this phenomenon can have deadly consequences. For the Hmong people who fled Laos to come to United States, their absolute terror of the Tsog Tsuam, an evil night spirit that crushes you in your sleep, it became tragically real. Over 100 healthy men died suddenly in their beds. Doctors had no idea what was happening, but the community was convinced it was the spirit. And get this real-life horror story was the actual inspiration for Freddy Krueger in A Nightmare on Elm Street. So if these figures are showing up to people all around the world, what do they actually look like? Well, eyewitness accounts are so common that paranormal researchers have started to categorize them, almost like you'd profile different types of suspects. The encounters can be anything from just a vague, moving black mist to a very clear human-shaped silhouette. But there are two figures that pop up again and again, known for the specific terror they bring: the old hag and the infamous Hat Man. Now, one of the most physically terrifying encounters you can have is with what's called the old hag. This one isn't just something you see, she's something you feel. People describe the distinct physical sensation of an old woman climbing onto their chest, her weight making it impossible to breathe. It's a 1-2 punch of sight and touch that feels completely, horrifyingly real. But maybe the most bizarre and unsettling figure of them all is the Hat Man. What's so wild about this one is the unbelievable consistency of the details. People who've never even heard of him will describe the exact same thing: a tall, dark man, usually in a coat and a wide-brimmed hat. And he almost never interacts. He just stands there, in the doorway or at the foot of the bed, just watching. And the feeling of dread is apparently off the charts. So, all of this leads us to the biggest question of all. Are these figures just projections from our own subconscious, little glitches in our brain's matrix? Or are they something else entirely? The search for an answer really splits down two very, very different roads. Okay, so on one side, you've got the paranormal theories. These suggest the figures could be anything from interdimensional beings peeking in, to ghosts, to even demonic entities that literally feed on fear.
On the other side, you have science, offering up explanations that are rooted in our own heads, hallucinations caused by sleep paralysis, a tired brain filling in the blanks, or even something called the intruder illusion. The neuroscience argument is actually pretty convincing. Our brain, right, it's basically a prediction machine. It's constantly trying to make sense of the world. But when it's exhausted or stressed, it can get things wrong. It might misinterpret the sensory data from, say, a coat on a chair or a weird shadow in the corner. Your brain's threat detector goes into overdrive and assigns it a purpose. It assigns it agency. And just like that, that coat isn't a coat anymore. It's a person, and they're watching.
But here's the big problem with that purely neurological explanation. If it's just a random brain glitch, how do you account for the specifics? Why do so many people, totally unrelated, from different times and different cultures, all report seeing a tall man in a wide-brimmed hat? Believers argue that a shared experience that specific has to be more than just a coincidence. It just defies the odds.
And so here we are, left standing on a threshold. We're in that strange space between what science can explain and what people just experience. The logic is sound, but the stories are bone-chillingly real. And that's really the heart of the whole mystery, isn't it? Science tells us that shadow people are most likely a product of our own amazing and sometimes flawed brains. But that global consistency, that shared archetype of the Hat Man, it just leaves this huge, unsettling question mark hanging in the air. For the people who've seen them, the experience feels way too real, way too consistent to just be a bad dream.
Ultimately, it just leaves you wondering. When we're pushed to our limits, when that veil between waking and sleeping becomes paper thin, are we just seeing the ghosts in our own machine? Or is that the moment the veil to something else becomes thin enough for us to see right through it?